And we get it rolling on the Krug Show Friday, August the 11th, 2 o'clock on the West Coast, 5 o'clock on the East Coast. Look who's in the house, Brad Graham. Fired up to talk to Brad, and of course we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out, Emeryville, Corte Madera. They're open from 11 a.m. until they run out, but roughly 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. But get there and get your brisket, get the brisket chili. Say hi to Damon, say hi to Mary. Tell them that Larry Krueger sent you. They always love to hear from people who are supporting them through the Krug Show. And, of course, we're also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, marinautoglass.com on the web. Also give them a call, 415-883-3030. You bust a windshield. You crack a windshield. You want it replaced? Man, they'll do it for you. They'll come out. They'll pop out the old one, glaze in the new one. And very, very convenient. You can't beat marinautoglass.com. And, of course, New York Style Sausage Company as well. The only Italian sausage that I eat is New York style Italian sausage. Brad, good to see you, man. How are you?
Larry, I'm good. I mean, how can you not be good with all the 49ers football stuff that we get to talk about these days?
Oh, my goodness. Camp is going on, and today they were in Vegas, and yesterday they were in Vegas. Sunday they'll play the Raiders in the first preseason game in Las Vegas, a much, much anticipated first preseason game. And let's talk a little bit about these joint practices. I'm not there for them, so I can't tell you firsthand how the Niners looked. There were a lot of turnovers today. Brock threw one interception in the team portion, according to Matt Mayoko. I was looking at that he threw a couple more in the 7-on-7 drills. And then overall, it sounds like Lance and Darnold also threw an interception in the 7-on-7 drills. What do you make of what's going on in Vegas? I mean, you're following it on social media as well. You're seeing some of the numbers. The numbers that I got from Jack Hammer were Brock Purdy, 16 of 28, a touchdown run, and 2 interceptions. And I guess there was maybe a third in the 7-on-7. Darnold 3 of 3 with an interception in the 7-on-7. Lance 1 of 2, and there was an interception in the 7-on-7. What do you make of the rep breakdown where Brock's getting all the reps and Sam and Lance are getting virtually none, and Brandon Allen is literally getting none?
I mean, I think we kind of had an idea going into this joint practice that Brock Purdy wasn't going to be playing in this preseason game. So the way that I'm kind of looking at it is they're using these 2 practices to really give the lion's share reps to Brock Purdy to be able to continue to work his way back and get comfortable and continue to build. And then Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, they're probably going to play a half each in the preseason game where they'll get a ton of live reps and things like that. So I think it's just kind of the way they've been balancing it. You can go back to training camp where you had Brock Purdy's take days off, which meant Trey and Sam got a lot of reps and got reps with the first team. And I feel like it's just how they've been bouncing back and forth between splitting these reps. I think obviously what's clear is Brock Purdy is the quarterback 1 heading into the season, and they're operating that way. So the fact that he's getting the majority of the reps in joint practice, I think it makes sense if that's going to be your quarterback 1 moving forward, because you want him to get as many opportunities to go out there, to make mistakes, get back in the groove of things, and continue to get ready for week 1 against Pittsburgh.
How did you think you've been to camp a bunch this summer? What did you think of Brock in relationship to what you saw from him a year ago pre-elbow surgery?
I think with Brock, we're looking at it and evaluating it through a lens of this guy had a pretty severe surgery, and he's coming back from a surgery on his throwing elbow. And so all of that being said, I think for me, that's how I was evaluating him. A guy who's coming back quickly, by the way. And then what I did see from him was each and every day he got better. He settled in more. He felt and looked more comfortable. And each team period that progressed, you could see the offense moving better, being more efficient. In all the move the ball periods, I definitely thought that Brock Purdy had the best move the ball periods out of any quarterback in training camp. And to me, that was a good sign. I still think, you hear it all the time. You hear the rust, and and I think that's to be expected, and that should have been expected. And I think when you're evaluating Brock Purdy in training camp, you're evaluating him as a guy who's just come off major surgery. So your evaluation will be tweaked a little bit to basically take that in. We're not like, I at least for I can only speak for myself. I wasn't evaluating Brock Purdy like he should come out, hit the floor running, QB1, like, off to the races, this is the next guy. It was, we just gotta see what Brock Purdy is. We gotta set the baseline evaluation and then build upon the evaluation, and I think Brock Purdy did that. I think he started out a little slow, and each practice got incrementally better to the point where they were humming and moved the ball period. He had that one practice where he had 3 touchdowns in a row. He ran a touchdown in, and then he had a drop touchdown in the left corner to Danny Gray. Like, he showed throughout just that short period of time in practice, with days off in between, that he was able to improve and get better. And I don't think he's out the woods yet. I still think there is still that room for working back from injury, because if you've seen and you've logged any of the other previous quarterbacks that have come before him on other teams, you've seen guys have a little bit of a ways to get back. It took Derek Carr a long time to get back. Carson Wentz never got back. They're different injuries, but again, there's always a process for each individual player that goes into their process back. It's also physical, but it's also mental, and I think Brock Purdy is still in the middle of that process. So I think by week 1, he'll be in much better shape than he was to start at training camp.
Did you see any diminished arm strength? There are people suggesting that his interceptions in Vegas the last couple of days all are attributable to a lack of arm strength, which is it's like you don't know what to believe, because there's
Right.
that people know that that's kind of like the weakness of Brock Purdy, and there's people that want Trey Lance to start so bad that they'll just just say whatever just to kind of what Brock they know if Brock's real question is not who can he process, because he processes better than Darnold and Lance. It's not about can he be accurate, because he's more accurate than those guys. It's not about his timing, because his timing's better consistently than those guys. So it has to be the arm strength. It has to be the issue. And so a lot of the criticism today is like, not only did Brock throw interceptions, it's all attributable to his lack of arm strength. I feel like I get to know a little bit about what I'm watching. I don't see a dramatic loss of arm strength, or even a subtle loss of arm strength. To me, he looks very much like the guy who I remember. And when Kyle Shanahan said earlier this week, Brock's the real deal, people took that like he was boasting that he was going to be the next, MVP of the league. I think that's Kyle just pushing back on the people that might be out there who are going to say, you know what, he's not the same guy from a year ago. I felt like when he said he's the real deal, kind of that was in relation to, hey, this guy is back from this injury, he's recovered, and he's, what you saw last year was not coincidental, wasn't accidental, and it wasn't like some mirage. What you saw is what you get, and that's what this guy is. That's what I took away from the real deal. But what was your takeaway?
So I think 2 things can be true. I think Brock Purdy can still be working back from the surgery. He can still be fine-tuning the arm and getting back in the groove of things, while also not having diminished arm strength. I think both things can be true at the same time, because if there's anything that we saw from training camp, one of the biggest trends was Brock Purdy was pushing the ball downfield more than any other quarterback on the field, whether it was Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, Brandon Allen. I would say Brandon Allen probably had the nicest deep ball completion out of any quarterback, that one to Willie Snead.
Right.
That was a really
With
nice
two defenders
down the
right there.
left sideline, dropped it right in the bucket, and that's what you want to see. That's what we're hoping for. But I think, again, trying to quantify what Brock Purdy's doing within the reasonable realm of expectation and evaluation, Brock was pushing the football downfield, and he was overthrowing the first throws. the first throws, whether it was Deebo Samuel down the right sideline, he was overthrowing him. And then after he had a couple overthrows, it started to kind of be like he started to underthrow it a little bit. I don't know. Have you ever played beer pong, Larry?
Yes.
So I made this correlation to like Brock Purdy trying to find his deep ball accuracy like beer pong. Like you got the center cup and you're shooting it, you're hitting the back rim, you're hitting the back rim. You're like, all right, I got to adjust my location. And then you start hitting the front rim, and you start hitting the front rim. You're like, all right, I'm feeling it out, feeling it out. And then you start dropping it in. That's kind of how that looked to me. Like he was trying to get his timing down, not necessarily a diminished arm. It was just timing, trying to time it perfectly, whether it was a 50-50 ball, trying to hit a guy in stride, trying to do all those different types of things. That was my perception of it. I didn't see arm strength being an issue because I think it was on the final day that was open to open to fans where Deebo Samuel's running down the left sideline, and Brock didn't moonball it. He just darted it for about 35 yards downfield, and it hit. It was upfield, outside shoulder, in stride. Deebo just got a hand on it, wasn't able to bring it in, and I didn't feel like the arm was necessarily the issue. I felt like pinpointing the timing and accuracy is what he was trying to find.
It's funny. Everybody's all over the map here. TZ in the chat says Brock himself said his arm is almost back to normal. So there you go. And then 49er Daddy, Brock is washed. That is awesome. So I mean, there's a lot of people with a lot of strong feelings on this. What did you see from Sam Darnold? We'll go quarterback by quarterback here. What did you see from Sam Darnold this summer?
Sam had like a stretch of practices. I think it was like those 2 practices kind of after the first 2 or 3 where he was on fire. Like he was throwing balls on the move. He was throwing layered passes. You really saw that arm talent start to pop a little bit. And then it kind of felt like he reverted back a little bit to not trying to push the ball too far. Like, because when we did see him go for 2 deep ball attempts, they were severely underthrown. I think it was one to Brandon Ayuk and then one to Willie Snead. So with Sam, it just kind of felt like he could get the job done, but he's also just trying not to make mistakes. That's just kind of what it felt like. It felt like he really put an emphasis on himself to take care of the football and not put it in harm's way. So you got a lot of short to intermediate with Sam. He really didn't push the ball downfield all that much, and when he did, he wasn't ultra successful on it. He's been okay. I didn't love Sam back in 2021 when the 49ers were toying with the idea of trading him to be the starter. I did not like that idea at all. But I was much more open to the idea of Sam being third string quarterback, second string quarterback, whatever it may be. And I think he's good in that role. I think he could win the 49ers football games as long as he takes care of it and doesn't put it in harm's way. And we know what it is. That's Sam's thing. It's just processing. It's what he needs to work on the most. His issue isn't physical tools. His issue is just taking care of the football, being confident, standing in that pocket and letting it rip and making the correct decision in the process.
Yeah. I see, his processing as a little bit slow and his timing is a little bit slow. So as far as his actual ball, his accuracy, his throwing mechanics, his ability to escape the pocket, extend the play, a lot of those things I like. But as far as I think he processes a step slow, and I think his timing, he sometimes is a step or a moment late. And if there's any consistency that I've seen with his incompletions, it's that he should have thrown it a second earlier, and he throws it a second too late. What do you see with Trey Lance, and what did you see this summer with Lance?
Trey Lance has been a fun eval because I got to watch him his entire rookie season at training camp. I got to watch him his entire sophomore season and was able to go to joint practices in Minnesota. So I got to watch him go up against Minnesota's defense. And now heading into year 3, I've been able to watch him throughout this entire training camp. So you you could make the case Trey Lance, rookie Trey Lance, definitely could have been the starter over Jimmy Garoppolo. To me, they were pretty even all throughout training camp. I feel like Jimmy does the small things really well that Kyle likes, so he wanted to keep that continuity, and plus we knew the locker room liked him. But from a pure on-field standpoint, I was banging the table for Trey Lance to be the starter. I felt like he needed to. He needed those reps, needed to get him out there, and that would have been the best opportunity for him. Definitely dipped his sophomore year. But what was really cool about this year was you could see those mechanical changes. Like you could see there were some plays where he's hitting his back foot in his drop, and that ball was out instantly to the point where it like took me by surprise. Where I'm like, dang, he got that ball out fast, and he got it on a rope. I remember one of his best throws was to Brandon Ayuk. I think it was about 15, 20 yards outside the numbers. He plants his back foot, lets it rip. The ball's on a line drive. And, I think it was like Ambry Thomas or something that was basically right there in Ayuk's hip pocket. It hits Ayuk square in the chest. I think you've been able to see that Trey Lance has improved, and you can see the mechanics improve. I think he's still developing as a natural processor. I feel like but one of the biggest differences that I noticed when he knew where to go with the football, he went there with the football. And that was one of the biggest things that I took away that really elevated his camp this year, is that the decisiveness that he showed, opposed to last year, which I think was really hindering him, you definitely see the maturation process with Trey Lance.
Yeah, I mean, I see a player who has a first of all, he has a better looking stroke. He's got a shorter from where the ball rests to where the ball's released. That whole process is shorter than it was a year ago. Last year, I saw a guy who would bring it down almost around the hip, loop it around, and he had an elongated motion. This year, his motion is much more streamlined than I remember. And I think, if it's the finger, but his ball is a better ball. I mean, he'll have an occasional wobble, but the high speed wobble, which he had last year, you don't see that anymore. So to me, his ball is noticeably better. His accuracy is definitely better. But I also don't. I see them. There's no read option anymore. I don't know what happened to the read option. They just eradicated it from their entire playbook. It seems like Darnold and Lance, especially, are dumping it off underneath a ton. And I've barely seen Trey Lance take hardly any shots down the field. I've hardly seen Sam Darnold take any shots down the field. For the most part, they're throwing in the intermediate range or underneath. Mm-hmm. And all I'll say is that I think Trey's, cut patterns, like, let's say anything from 10 to 12 yards to 20, 25 yards in that range, the ins, the outs look great. Like, I mean, he's putting it on a line. It's coming out with velocity. The ball's really tight. He's sticking it on the receiver pretty consistently. As far as his deep ball, as I said, I've barely seen him throw any deep balls this year, so I really couldn't tell you what his deep ball accuracy looks like. His short ball accuracy and short ball mechanics on the short game and the stuff that's within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage is kind of a little still like that's where his bugaboo is. That's his hit and miss area. Sometimes he throws it too high. Sometimes he throws it too low. It seems like, when he's trying to throw like 60%, he has a hard time throwing with touch and timing and accuracy. But when he's letting it rip, the ball looks awesome. That's what I'm seeing. But I also see a dramatically improved player. There was one practice where I felt like he lost confidence. He was looking down. He looked kind of defeated. But since that point, he's bounced back. He's, the throws that he misses in practice, he works on after practice. I see a dramatically improved quarterback, which when you factor in the lack of reps, I think that's a remarkable improvement since he's doing it all on his own, really.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the biggest points with, evaluating each one of these players for their own, there's a lot of comparison right now. and everyone's trying to compare this person's development versus that person's development, and they're just in completely different spots, all four quarterbacks, in regards to their career. And one of the things with Trey is like, yeah, he's coming off an injury that took him out all year, and the fact that he looks improved, I think, is a huge like bonus for Trey's work that he put into this offseason. Now, I don't think Trey is done. I think Trey still got, like you mentioned, like you would see Trey Lance trying to hit some slants. Like you would see like ones to Ray Ray. I know that one highlight that he just put it perfectly only where Ray Ray could get it. But then you also had the other ones where like he's trying to hit Braden Willis off the left side on a quick slant and the ball is all the way behind him. And it's like you still get some inconsistencies in the short area accuracy where I think Kyle is like expecting that to be what you just do out of your sleep. Like you get out of bed, you throw that quick slant,
They're
and it's
layups. They're
accurate.
the layups.
Right. And I think those are the expectations, and I think he's still working through that. But I do think that he's shown improvement in a lot of different areas. I do agree that he really didn't push the ball downfield that much, but you did see the deep comebacks. You talked about like some corner posts and how he's able to throw outside the numbers. Like you can see that he's got the arm for it, but it's also controlling the arm and getting to that kind of that, like you said, the layup. And I talked to his quarterback coach coming out of NDSU when the 49ers we hadn't even drafted Trey yet. And I was watching tape of Trey, and on rollouts to the right, he would throw and the ball would die on him. And I'm like, this is interesting to me because he has a really strong arm. And I'm trying to figure out why the ball is dying on him. His coach would tell me he'd always tie it back to his feet and his base and the way he's the whole process is coming together. So I think that's something that Trey has always kind of had to work through, and he's still working through it. But we've also seen developments in other areas, and that's the positive, is that he's getting better, and like he's not done yet. I think he might be a year or two out from potentially being a really solid quarterback, like of being able to make every throw consistently. But the fact that we've seen him make those strides, I think, is a positive.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, it's an overwhelming positive. I think how much do you think Trey's going to play? I would love to see him play. Um, the entire first half, but I'd like to see him play into the second half. I mean, this guy has not played enough football. You got 3 games here, especially if he's playing well. If he's playing well, I wouldn't have any problem giving him 3 quarters in this game and giving Sam the fourth and just going from there into game 2. What would you want to see Trey play as far as quarters, and what do you think he'll play?
I would love to see Trey play as many reps as he can because I want to see him get comfortable. I think for me to best evaluate a guy, it's like you want to be able to see them get into a rhythm and see like they can get in and out of different plays. See what happens when a bad play happens. See what happens if a pick happens, how they rebound, how they bounce back. You talked about body language. That's huge for players. Like you can scout alone on body language. Like, so that is a big part of it. So if you the most reps you can get Trey Lance, the better, because you get a better feel for what he's looking like. You get a better feel because think back to the last preseason game we saw Trey Lance against the Texans. It was a tough outing. So much so that when I went and did my live after my post game reaction, the chat looked like World War III just broke off because Trey had such a unfortunate performance that game in a preseason, and everyone was losing their mind. And I want to see Trey get as many opportunities as he can to string something together. And I think, consistency, continuity, that will help with that. And if he can get as many snaps out there, that's the best. I would imagine he gets a half. If he gets more than a half, so you can have some halftime adjustments, I would think that would be great. But if I'm the 49ers, I would start Trey Lance over Darnold, give Trey the first crack at it, and give him the first half. We'll see what happens. I'm not putting anything past Kyle with how he managed this quarterback thing. Like, who knows? We could see Darnold out there with the starters, and some people might get really upset about that. But if it were up to me, I'd put Trey out there first. I'd let him get a half, and I would flip it for the second game as well.
Brad, I know you're hearing a lot of the talk around the 49ers and the quarterbacks. I'm going to play this for you. I want you to tell me what you think. I just thought this was just a ridiculous quote. This is Florio with Eisen, and here we go. I'm going to rewind it here. We'll get it from the front. Here we go.
I don't understand the sensitivity on the subject matter here, Mike.
I don't get it either. I think part of it is there are plenty of people who use their voice on social media but don't otherwise use their eyes and ears to listen and hear what's being said and aren't following it as closely as you and I do, so they're stunned by the idea that Trey Lance would fall behind the guy who was seeing ghosts against the Patriots on Monday Night Football and the guy that we just assume is done because it failed for him in his first couple of starts, and look at everything they gave up to get Lance. There's a certain organizational pride that goes into seeing Lance thrive, and you don't want to admit that your team screwed up, but they did. And they balanced it out by getting Brock Purdy with the last pick in the draft the next year.
Yeah.
It's not like they're walking around saying, oh, woe is us, we made a horrible mistake with Trey Lance, but they did make a horrible mistake with Trey Lance, and that's okay. You can't wallow in it. You just move on. And I think the main reason he's still on the roster is, as a third overall pick, the slotted rookie contract, as veteran backup contracts go for quarterbacks, this is a pretty good deal to keep him around at that number. They know they need 3. They would trade him if someone blew them away.
There you go. That was Florio with Eisen, and Eisen basically didn't push back. He's like, yeah. I mean, listen to what Florio basically said there, that we don't know as much as him. Okay, so these people on social, they're not following it like you and I are, Rich. I'm at practice, every practice. You're at practice, lots of practices. Then it's like, well, why are Niner fans sensitive to this? I guess it's organizational pride. And then he goes on to say, the 49ers screwed up. The 49ers made a horrible mistake. And I just kind of retweeted that. I said, one, I find Florio to be incredibly arrogant. I find his Niner stuff to be, if he's an insider, he might be an insider on the other teams in the league, but his inside stuff on the Niners is like rarely right on. And to me, I kind of view it as Trey is a talented, ascending prospect who's incredibly raw, who should be graded differently than some of the other quarterbacks that have come into the league because of COVID, the lost season, FCS, how little he played, the nature of what he did at North Dakota State, where you could just run guys over, where in the NFL you're not running over Isaiah Simmons, as we saw in the Arizona game. I see Trey as an ascending, really intriguing prospect who's got the goods physically, mentally, and football is important to him. And to me, it would be a horrible mistake to trade him at this point unless you're getting somebody that's going to put you over the top this year. You get Montez Sweat from the Commanders and put him opposite Nick Bosa, and you get Montez Sweat in a pick or something like that. Now I'm listening, right? Because I don't think Trey's going to play. I think it's going to be Brock's job. You do have Darnold. You do have Allen. I don't like moving off of Trey. But if I get a bookend edge rusher like Sweat, I think that could be enough to vault me over the Eagles and Chiefs and get that 6th Lombardi. But short of that, I'm not in a rush to trade Trey Lance, and I think it might be a horrible mistake if they trade him. And yet Florio's making it seem like they screwed up. It's official. They made a horrible mistake with Trey Lance. That's official. And their only move is to move off of him. I mean, make it make sense. You heard the same thing. This wasn't the first time you heard this, right?
No.
Now, you caught this the other day.
Yeah.
What did you think when you heard it? Give me your perspective on it, because I love your perspective. I think you've got a great deal of knowledge and perspective on these quarterbacks and player development. What do you think of what he said there?
Well, one, Florio's a funny guy. When, like you said, when it comes to covering the Niners, I feel like there's a little bit of troll action there. I feel like he likes to poke some fun at the 49ers because let's face it, we have a very passionate fan base, and it's really easy to stir up this hornet's nest. You just give a little poke, and you get people riled up. So Florio's been dealing with this for a long time. Even I think it was a year ago, he was talking about he's guaranteeing Tom Brady is going to be the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. So he has these takes from time to time. But what I do think is interesting is that he's kind of echoing a thought process that I've heard from other people that I do trust. And I listen in, I lean in a little bit closer when they say something. Like, I don't know what it is with this situation with Trey Lance. I can't even pretend to define it from an organizational standpoint of how they're processing this. But I do think what is true is that every single person inside that locker room has a price tag associated with them. Kyle Shanahan has talked about this. John Lynch has talked about this. If someone comes to them with a good enough deal that makes it worth it for them to move someone, they will consider it. And I really do think that is also with Trey Lance as well. And the other thing with Trey Lance, they're against the clock with Trey. Like, I think it's not discussed enough when like these conversations are brought up, because obviously I understand the emotional attachment that fans have to Trey Lance. I mean, I was over the moon when the 49ers moved up to 3. I'm like, finally, franchise quarterback. We're getting a dual threat. Everything we've ever wanted. It's here. Trey Lance, Justin Fields, no Mac Jones. Like, we were through the moon. We were like on a 3-month parade until the draft. But they take Trey Lance, they keep Jimmy, and it just hasn't worked out. Trey has been either injured when he's gotten his opportunities and then takes away other additional opportunities, and it just has been a bad shake up until this point. But we now find ourselves in year 3, and correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, but the 49ers have to decide next year if they're picking up his 5th-year option or not, correct?
I believe so, in March.
So that puts a timer on Trey Lance. And if Brock Purdy's your guy, and I think Alan Stiles from 95.7 asked the question, is Brock Purdy quarterback 1, or is he the franchise quarterback? And I thought it was a phenomenal question, because I think Brock Purdy's quarterback 1, and I think this year is like an audition to be the franchise guy, proving he can make it through an entire season, proving he can lead this team to back-to-back playoff runs, and the last year wasn't a fluke, proving to the fan base, proving to the organization that Brock can do it after UCL surgery, right? There's a lot of variables with the surgery and everything that happened. Like, who knows what that year could have been like if he didn't go down on the 6th offensive play against the Eagles. But I also believe that creates a set of unknowns where the 49ers still have to feel out what Brock is. They still have to feel like, is he back? Is he the guy that we saw last year? Is there any kind of slowdown or regression that happens from the surgery? So I think it's fair that the 49ers are evaluating this thing very fluidly. And I think you have to look at that with Trey as well, is that they have basically this year to figure out what they're going to do with Trey. Because if they don't pick up his 5th-year option, how does that change like that dynamic? If Brock Purdy proves he's the guy this year, then that means Trey's out of here after next year, barring not getting a trade off. So, I mean, it was funny, Larry, because you have Mariucci go on Eisen, talk about Trey Lance getting traded.
He also said it. I mean, he had just met with Shanahan on the NFL Network set a day before, a couple days before, and then he came out and said, well, if Trey plays well, there'll be more suitors, and he's painted a picture where either Trey's cut, or not cut, but traded at the August 29th cut down, or that it could push into October, and that the Niners would hold on to him. But it wasn't like, hey, if he plays well, he'll be in the running to be the Niners quarterback. It was like he will play well to up his value. Like a decision has been made already, And now it's just about how Trey's departing, not when and if he's departing.
And that's Mooch, man. That's not Florio. Like
Right.
Mooch is a 49er guy. Like he bleeds red and gold, just like all these fans in the chat. Like he is part of the 49ers legacy and all that type of stuff. He's a 49er guy when he comes around. So that's why you hear that. You hear Mayoko talking about how these joint practices could be a possible like show off period for Trey. Then immediately after practice yesterday, Vic Tafers like quote tweets Mayoko and was like, "Oh, Trey had a good practice. Who's going to come trade for him?" It's just all, and then you have ESPN putting together trades. Like it's just a weird kind of like it's like guerrilla marketing. It feels like we got some guerrilla marketing like all coming together at the same time. Now, I'm not going to say what that is and put a definitive spin on any of it. It's just something that I've noticed, and I think it is pretty interesting to watch.
It's funny. This guy says, I won't say his handle, but he says, the Trey Cult hoping and praying their boy doesn't lay an egg this weekend. Well, it's funny. I mean, there's different ways to look at it. Do you think that he's got a better chance to be on the roster if he plays well in the preseason or if he plays poorly? Because the people that are saying he's going to be traded are like, hey, he's going to play well in the preseason and then the market's going to go up for him and then he'll be traded. So if he plays poorly, is he more likely to be here than if he plays well?
I think if he plays poorly, he's more likely to be here because, again,
That's
like
wild.
The market will dictate like what the 49ers do, because what we've also learned from the 49ers, go back to last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, if they have an asset that they believe is valuable, they have proven that they are not going to move off said asset unless they get what they believe they should get. Hence Jimmy Garoppolo on the kid field, basically all throughout training camp, them not being able to work out a deal because no one would offer what they wanted. And then they said, all right, well, we'll just rip up your deal, bring you back as a backup because we control you and we're not going to just let you go and not get anything in return. You can take that same ideology and you can apply it to this Trey Lance situation. The 49ers, I don't think, are going to let Trey Lance go for no reason. They would consider probably some type of trade if the compensation, like you mentioned, is worth it. If it's not worth it, I don't see them doing anything. I think they would be better suited keeping Trey, Sam, and Brock, even if you look at the dollar amount and the cap figures and you kind of look at it holistically as, how the other numbers look across the league, it's still relatively reasonable for a quarterback room. And hey, I don't think the 49ers do it unless they're blown away by something. And for that to happen, guess who needs to play well? That person is Trey Lance. And so if Trey Lance goes out, and I would say in 2 preseason games, proves that, man, those mechanics look good. He looks sharp. He looks in rhythm. He's on time. The ball's coming out. I know a lot of fans are going to get really excited about that. But again, you also have to pay attention to he's on a timer. And if they truly believe it's Brock's job, that makes this situation much more complicated.
It's wild. At the beginning of the offseason in February, I said, after I saw John Lynch speak at the Combine, and I can still remember like it was yesterday. It's like, Trey's got to play, and that's the problem because we got a team that's ready to win right now. And the implication was clear, which was that they didn't believe that Trey was ready to play right now, or at least not play mistake-free football. And so they were going to recommit. So I came out of that, heard that, and said, you know what? To me, guys, it sounds like the 49ers are getting ready to recommit to Brock Purdy as their starter. And at this point, I think people thought Brock's been hurt, Trey's been hurt, they're on equal footing going into the offseason, and now they'll fight it out. And I said, well, no, I think Brock's going to be the number one guy. They're going to recommit to Brock and move off of Trey. And people were like incredibly pissed. And basically every person that has said that the Niners are not going with Trey is in the feels the wrath then of the chat or the Trey fans. I guess John Middlecoff says Trey is number 3. and that will probably be traded. And then, sure enough, I put that up on the board, and there, where if I can find it here, but somebody in the chat, here we go. Middlecoff is a dunce.
Yeah.
Here we go. Steven Saunders. Middlecoff is a knucklehead. So now it's like we don't like the message, so let's attack the messenger. In this case, it was Middlecoff. Then I mentioned that, you mentioned, Mariucci. Mariucci said, that maybe he'll be traded. And, it's like there's people up here in the chat who are just immediately like, here we go. Joey Nichols. Mariucci has no inside information on this team. Then, it's the former Bronco offensive lineman, Mark Schlereth, who said that, Brock's going to be the guy. What does Mark Schlereth know about our team? Then it's Ian Rappaport. What does Ian Rappaport know? Then it's Albert Breer. What does Albert Breer know? Then it's it's Adam Schefter. What does Schefter know?
We give our takes after being at practice. What does this guy know?
What does this guy know? What does anybody know? And it's amazing. It's like, okay, let's just back away, take a deep breath, and all I'm saying is, look what they're all saying. I don't know. I think I know more than all those guys, to be completely honest, because I'm there at practice, and I feel like I've got a better sense of it. But I don't have an inside source. Nobody's whispering to me what's going to be the end game here. What I think is going to happen is only what I can handicap, which is the football player. And I think the football player, Trey Lance, is going to play really well in this preseason game against the Raiders. I think he's going to move the team down the field. I think they're going to score points. And I think the same way that everybody was talking about Malik Cunningham this morning after what he did last night for the Patriots, and everybody was talking about Dorian Thompson-Robinson after the Hall of Fame game, I think coming out of this weekend, there'll be a lot of people talking about, Trey Lance, right? Trey Lance looks great. That's what I think we're going to see. What I don't know is Sal says, what does Larry Krueger know? Exactly. Larry Krueger's only at practice, though, watching every snap. But, I'm just giving you my opinion. I think Trey's going to play really well because that's what I'm seeing at practice. And to me, I see a much improved player with a lot of weapons and a lot of talent around him, and I think he's going to have success. What I don't know is how the 49ers are going to react to that success and how the other teams in the NFL are going to react to that success, because there's still more quarterback jobs than there are good quarterbacks. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you show that you're a good quarterback, there's going to be a market for you. But then if Trey looks really good, do the Niners go, wait a second, that's our guy. We're staying with him. And we'll figure, he may be due $17 million next year, but we'll figure it out next year. We're keeping him here. Or Sal says sarcasm, Larry. No, I hear you, Sal. I know. I saw the sarcasm. But you know what I'm saying? How do the Niners react if Trey plays well? How do you think the league reacts, Brad, if Trey plays well? I'm banking that Trey's going to play well. I really believe he will.
Well, think about it, Larry. We live in an overreactive society. Look at the flip side to C.J. Stroud's performance, already being labeled a bust for like having 2 drives and 1 really poor pick. Granted, it was a bad pick. He threw it right to the defender. Didn't see any of it.
He looked super raw.
What did they bring up? Oh, that S2 testing. Like, it was just like, boom, instantly. Like, he's a bust. Get this guy out of here. And it's one preseason game. It's first preseason game. Not everyone's going to come out and light it up. And we understand everyone has their own trajectory for development. Not everyone is the same. And clearly one of the things that we've learned with Trey is that he has a bit of a curve that he's working through, and it's been still pointing up. But he still has a really high ceiling, but he's still angling up to hit the ceiling. He's not there yet. So if he comes out and goes for 3 touchdowns, and you see it in a multitude of different ways, 1 deep ball, one just like right in between tight coverage with, between the linebackers. You get a layered throw, 25 yards downfield over a linebacker in between the safety. People are going to get really, really excited about that. And you're going to get those Buccaneer fans who have Baker Mayfield as their starting quarterback. Like, ooh, like we could have Trey. Like maybe that would be better than Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield. You're going to get the fan perspective. That's going to start up an organic type of buzz. Then, of course, NFL people talk. It's a very incestual business. These guys are moving around. I mean, just think about how many GMs the 49ers have produced that are on other teams, coaches that they produced on other teams. So guys talk. Guys have a general sense of what the vibe is across the league. And if Trey Lance comes in and balls out, like there's going to be some buzz because there's already been buzz around Trey around training camp. And if he goes and shows it on the big stage, even though it's preseason, again, we saw what happened last preseason. He got cooked by our own fan base in that Texans game. If he comes out and has a good preseason, he will be anointed. He will be like, oh, like this is the guy. And what is going to happen is, how do the 49ers react to it? And I think that was kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, and do the 49ers say, hey, we fear this this divided fan base, maybe divided potential locker room, divided media base on these two quarterbacks, and we're going to move Trey? Or do they say, you know what, man, the upside potential is great. We don't know about Brock. Let's just keep him, and let's keep all of our guys and see where it goes. It's going to be very interesting to watch.
I get the sense that the 49ers do not care about what the fans have to say because this is going on 3 years, Larry. It went from Jimmy Garoppolo, like, oh, he's not the guy, and you have Jimmy fans and non-Jimmy fans. Then it went from Jimmy to Trey fans. Then it went from Trey to Jimmy fans and Trey to Brock, and now it's Brock. Like, it's crazy. I don't think this conversation will end until the 49ers win a Super Bowl.
Or make a decision on these quarterbacks, and
still know people will talk about it. They will just every mistake, every interception. It's going to be revisionist history right. Until one of these guys wins a Super Bowl. It's just how it's going to be.
I even think if the Niners traded Trey Lance this year, and Brock Purdy led them into the Super Bowl and they won it, and just then became, let's say, a good but not spectacular quarterback, and Trey went to fill-in-the-blank AFC team, Raiders or whatever, and he became a very good top-tier NFL quarterback, which is, I think, all very possible. I think the fans would absolutely, even though the Niners won the Super Bowl, they would still be like, you got rid of a higher end quarterback, and I even if they win the Super Bowl, I really think there'll be people saying,
You're probably right.
You would think that the Super Bowl would shut everybody up. Probably not.
I would think, but I've thought a lot of things that this fan base continues to surprise me on a daily basis.
Mexi Mob 1987 says, Larry, haven't heard much about undrafted free agent offensive lineman Joey Fisher. Well, Brad is an ex-offensive lineman and had a chance to come up to camp and watch Fisher do his thing. I asked Chris Forster about Fisher. I said, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Before I could even get the question out, he's like, he's a guard. He's a guard. I mean, he wasn't like, he's like, he could be a center down the road, but he's a guard. He's an interior guy. He's not a tackle because of the arm length or lack of arm length. What do you see with the 49er offensive line, period, or in general, I should say, and what do you see with Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely tell coming out of Shepherd, like the type of physicality he has, he definitely was a guard. Like you could see he doesn't have that type of length that you want at the tackle position. So the natural switch to guard made sense to me. To be honest, I didn't see a whole lot from Fisher. I don't have a comprehensive scouting report of what he was able to do in training camp, because as you know, Larry, if you were at training camp, you had to evaluate quarterbacks because that was the number one point of emphasis for anyone at training camp. And of course, Joey Fisher was running with the threes, and so I didn't get a great look at Fisher, to just be bluntly honest. But I do think he does have that power. He's got a really good frame to be a guard. I mean, you see him, he walking around, he looks like an NFL offensive lineman. What I imagine what's going to happen with Fisher is he'll be a practice squad guy, and he's going to be a guy that could probably earn a roster spot maybe a year or two down the road. But the overall offensive line, I think that has definitely been something that has come into focus, especially these last 2 days at joint practice, because of no more Mike McGlinchey. You insert Colton McKivitz, and also the 49ers have already been dealt a bunch of injuries on the offensive line with Jalen Moore getting hurt. He's your primary swing tackle. That means and we already know Trent Williams takes a lot of rest days. So there's a lot of times where the 49ers are running out Matt Pryor, Leroy Watson with your starting group. Leroy Watson is a converted tight end who's still kind of learning the position. He's got a good frame, good, really long arms, good base, and he's shown some promise, but he's still raw in what he's able to do. And so I think, like, when you're looking at the overall offensive line, I think a lot of questions have come up about Colton, and also questions that I have are, how's the depth going to hold up throughout the year, especially at the tackle position, because last year's primary swing tackle is now your starting right tackle, and your backup swing tackle is now your primary, but he's hurt. So they're already diving deep into their depth bag on the offensive line.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the people that criticize the Niners' offensive line, I don't see huge areas of criticism here. I really don't. Trent is Trent. I like the Burford Banks combo at guard. I think they're going to be there for a while. I like Jake Brendel at center. I like Feliciano as the backup center. You also have, McKivitz, who I think is a very underrated offensive lineman, playing right tackle. He's probably best as kind of like that first reserve offensive lineman because he can play all 5 spots. But I'm okay with him at right tackle. I think he'll do a serviceable job. We asked Chris Forster the other day about some of the young guys, right? Nick Zakel and Jason Poe and Joey Fisher and Ilm Manning, who's actually kind of impressed me a little bit too, Ilm Manning. But he said they're all really improved and this and that, from either from minicamp till now or from last year to this year, Jalen Moore. But then he also said, but don't confuse, they're all really improved with they're ready. They're not ready. So I kind of think they're going to keep 8 offensive linemen, the 5 starters,
Yep.
John Feliciano, Nick Zakel. And just from talking to some of the people around the team, I get the sense that the swing tackle is going to come from outside the organization and not from – I don't think it's going to be Pryor. I don't think it's going to be Jalen Moore. I don't think it's going to be Leroy Watson. I saw Cincinnati may move off of Lael Collins at the cut down. I think that player would be of a lot of interest to me. There's probably a couple other tackles. Deontay Smith is a guy that I really like, who's a young offensive lineman for the Bengals as well, who's an offensive tackle from East Carolina. I really liked him in the draft a couple years ago. I think Cincinnati is a team that I would target as far as a trade. But if I could get Lael Collins, I'd give a 4th round pick to Cincinnati for Lael Collins. Or if there was an offensive lineman that was drafted high, a tackle that just hasn't come of age somewhere else, like they did with Laken Tomlinson, who the Niners had a high grade on. This is maybe an opportunity to make that kind of a deal. But I see a deal coming for that swing tackle.
I mean, I like that projection because obviously we've seen Jalen Moore for a couple years now, and I don't think he doesn't have ability. His problem is just consistency. Being able to do his job at a consistent level has been his biggest issue. We remember when he came in against Denver. I mean, he probably had the worst 4 or 5 play series I have seen from an offensive lineman in a long time. He was instantly benched. They brought in Colton McKivitz. But then he rebounded against the Panthers when he had to start in place of Trent Williams. So he's an interesting eval because I think he has a pretty solid body for playing tackle. He's got a starting body, but he's just inconsistent, and it's hard to really determine what you're going to get from him. So And I haven't seen enough from Matt Pryor to convince me one way or the other that he's even like he should be the guy either. I like what I've seen from Feliciano. I think Zakel is definitely one of those prospects that they want to develop at center and continue for him to get better. And I do agree they are going to keep 8 offensive linemen. I mean, they got to at this point. But yeah, if that makes sense to me, I would say La'el Collins is going to be better than any other tackle, swing tackle that you have by a far margin. I mean, he could even compete probably at right tackle with Colton McKivitz. La'el like has shown he's a talented player. It just hasn't worked with the Bengals, but I mean, he's a little bit undersized, but dang, he moves well. He's strong. He's got good technique, and he would fit this kind of hybrid outside zone gap scheme, kind of run blocking, like the way they go get after it as run blockers. He would fit exactly what the 49ers have. But in regards to the starters, I agree. I think Burford, Brendel, and Banks are all going to improve this year. I think Trent stays the same, and I think Colton McKivitz can get the job done. It's just, again, when you get into those situations where it's 3rd and 15 and you got to have it and you got to have a 5 to 7 step drop, how is he going to hold up? And I think, that's the other thing that we just got to wait and see. But we've also seen Colton play really well. You go back to that week 18 performance against the Rams when he had to step in at left tackle for Trent Williams in a must-win game in 2021. And he's going up against Von Miller and Leonard Floyd. He played fantastic. I don't think he gave up a sack. He played really well. So Colton can do it. There's not concerns that he can or cannot do it. He can do it. It's just I know people are getting concerned, especially after hearing that, Max Crosby beat him on a couple reps today or the day before.
It's funny. I was at practice the other day, and my son gave me a Texas hat because he was out and was working for a construction management firm last summer in Texas, and he's like, "Dad, I got you a souvenir." I'm like, "Cool, what is it?" And he's like, "It's a white Longhorns hat." Well, I'm kind of an A&M fan myself, so I
remember that. Yeah.
I was not a big Longhorns guy, but I thought, you know what? I got to bring a hat to camp, and I got to have a white hat because it's just so freaking hot out there. So I've been kind of holding it in my hand because I when I have put it on, I get a little reaction. I don't want to get too much of a reaction. And then other people are like, you're sucking up to Shanahan and this and that, right? I get that too, right? So the other day it was just so unbelievably hot, and I had it on. I'm talking to somebody, and I look over and I hear this, "Hey, what's up with the Texas hat?" And it's Colton McKivitz, who played at West Virginia, and I think West Virginia kind of hates Texas. And he was like, I said, "Hey, my kid got it for me." He's like, he starts shaking his head like, "Take off the Texas hat, Krug." Kane Crouch says, "Tell these negative fans to support whoever the quarterback is. You're either a 49er fan or an individual player fan. Support these young men." Yeah, I mean, that people get so dug in. It's like you wonder. I'm a Niner content creator, but I'm tweeting out 19 factoids that all try to make Brock Purdy look bad. And it's like, are you a Niner fan or are you just a Trey Lance fan and you will not be happy if Trey's not the starter? Ricky says, just a little perspective. Trey, with all his lack of experience entering the league, still looks better in his first preseason than C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud had a rough night. There's no question. I saw him. He looked frenetic, and like nowhere close to being ready to play. You might see a lot of Davis Mills this year. Okay, Brad. Without me leading you in any direction, you were at camp. Give me, without me leading you in any, position group, offense, defense. I really trust your opinion. Who stood out to you? Give me some players that you saw up this summer in Santa Clara that you're like, you know what? Maybe the people aren't talking about them, but they're on the Brad Graham radar.
TDP had a phenomenal camp. I mean, Ty Davis Price, just absolutely fantastic. I remember I was on the VIP side, so I was right behind you guys on the media side, and so I just had this wonderful view of everything that was happening in front of me. And I remember this one play. It was TDP. It was like I don't know if it was outside zone or mid zone to the left, but he's kind of going at about half speed. All of a sudden, he plants his foot in the ground and he levitates about 5 yards north-south, makes his way through the line of scrimmage, and then just buries his shoulder into the safety. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then one of like the very next plays, it was a stretch run to the right, and you have Talanoa Hufanga, who I thought has had one of the best camps out of any 49er, and he's the edge defender, right? He's setting the edge on the outside, and TDP beats Talanoa to the corner, and I'm like, what am I watching? Because I went into this camp thinking TDP was on the bubble. I thought after last year's camp, him not getting on the field, I saw glimpses, but I'm like, man, it was just so underwhelming, especially him being a third round pick. TDP this year was a completely different person. And I'm glad I'm not the only one that feels that way, because we've heard from Brendel, we've heard from some of the offensive linemen, we've heard from some of his coaches just crediting how different TDP looks. He looks like a different person, and it wasn't on my radar. I was actually expecting him to be a guy that kind of Laybourne looks like a guy, and I thought Laybourne was going to be able to push TDP, and maybe he did, but it didn't work in Laybourne's favor. I mean, TDP looks phenomenal. So I've been really, really happy with that. D Winters was a guy who started to pop for me late. It felt like he really started to get his footing, looked really good. I know this is your guy and my guy, Marcelino McCray. Ball looks phenomenal. I mean,
awesome. Yeah.
He didn't win every rep, but he was right there. Like he was always, whether it was in coverage or at the line of scrimmage, darting through the line for tackle for losses. I mean, that guy was everywhere. Braden Willis was a guy who stood out to me as a rookie. I thought he was the best rookie tight end on the field. I think he still has room to work in the blocking game, but I mean, as a receiver, like you see the skill set that he provides. Javon Kinlaw looks like a different person to me. And Larry, I'm a Javon guy. But even comparing Javon Kinlaw to what I saw last year, the speed, the get off, the burst, the pass rush moves, it's the transformation is unreal. I thought Kinlaw looked phenomenal. I mean, the list goes on and on, dude. Like there are some guys who, like, we spend so much time talking about the quarterback position, but there are a lot of guys on this roster who are competing for spots. I mean, the wide receiver room looks quality, down to the rookies, down to the vets. Literally, like, you go down the list, man. I know we spend so much time focusing on the cornerback and it's doom or gloom, who's going to start this or that, but dude, this team is stacked right now. Clellan Ferrell looks good. Austin Bryant showed flashes. Like I said, the list can go on and on of guys who showed me something and are going to make it really hard on this front office when it comes down to cutdown day.
Yeah, I mean, the Ray McLeod injury in a lot of ways opens up the door for maybe Ronnie Bell, maybe Tay Martin. Willie Snead has looked phenomenal in this camp. Chris Conley's a tremendous blocker. I'm interested to see how they round out the wide receiver core. I think they're probably going with 5, but man, Tay Martin is just, big guy with great ball skills, and I think he's going to have a great preseason. Ronnie Bell's dad is a wide receiver coach in college. You can kind of tell when you watch him play. He's so refined for a rookie receiver. He makes some amazing catches too. There was
a lot of hype about Ronnie Bell coming in, and I wasn't sure. I didn't do a lot of tape study on him heading into camp, but there was this one play. I think it was a deep out towards the left sideline. It was Trey Lance, and the ball, you could tell, just didn't come out of Trey's hand right, and it was kind of one of those flutterer passes that was behind. And Ronnie I was right in my vision. You can see him hit his route, come out of his break, had about 2 to 3 feet of separation between the defender heading towards the sideline. He instantly spots that the ball didn't come out right, and he puts his foot in the ground and pops up and back to catch the ball while the defender is coming to hit him. And I was like, that was impressive. Like, that was a veteran, like a rookie, like, doesn't look that decisive, that sharp. Again, being able to have like 2 or 3 steps on this guy, sticks his foot in the ground, stops his momentum to go backwards, and catch this ball on his back shoulder. I was like, okay, Ronnie. I was like, I see it. I definitely see it.
Yeah, no, I do too. I couldn't believe they drafted him. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And, medium size and doesn't have, great speed and has already torn his ACL. And I'm just looking at this pick going, what? And then all of a sudden I saw him in the mini camp and I'm like, wait a second, this guy's got refinement that's so unlike rookie receivers. Then I picked up the Dane Brugler draft guide, and somewhere deep in there, it's like his dad's a wide receiver coach in college, and I'm like, well, there you go. This guy is basically he's got somebody at the dinner table who can talk to him about the nuances of playing wide receiver, and that's why he looks like a 5-year veteran. He's really intriguing, and him and Tay Martin are both intriguing to me because there's a lot of receivers out there that run well. There's a lot of receivers that can give you a great highlight. But if you're going to bring a receiver that's actually going to help your quarterback, this team's got Danny Gray. They've got Ayuk. They've got Debo. They've got the big play guys. They got McCaffrey. They need more chain movers, guys that are absolutely going to catch it, keep that drive alive. And that's what they need if they're going to put a third wide receiver on the field or a fourth wide receiver from time to time. They need that guy to be a continuity piece. And I think with Tay Martin and Ronnie Bell, the nice thing is they both have such great ball skills and hands that they're exactly that. They're continuity pieces that are going to keep drives alive. I can't wait to see Tay Martin and Ronnie Bell do their thing. What about Latu? He's just dropping everything. I mean, Brad, it's like this guy was a third-round draft choice, and I know he hasn't played a lot of football, a lot of offense. He played defensive end when he first came to Bama, but he can't catch the ball right now. He talked to us the other day after practice. He said all the right things. He's like, hey, there's no excuses. I got to catch the ball. It's my job. I'm going to get on the jugs gun. I'm going to stay after. I'm going to work at it. He said all the right things, but he's got to get it going as far as catching the ball. This is a very competitive tight end battle. There's Kittle, who we know is the one. But then Charlie Warner's a try-hard blocker, and Dwelly's a special teams stalwart. And Braden Willis, as you mentioned, has really looked like maybe he could be tight end too. And there's Fumagalli here. So, Cam Latu is nice, and he's got some potential. He's big, he's strong, he's pretty fluid, pretty athletic. But there ain't no room for scholarship on this particular 53-man roster. How do you think that's going to shake out? You think Latu gets cut as a third-round pick, or do you think he gets it going in the preseason?
I agree with the evaluation. Latu really stood out to me as a guy who just was suffering with drops early on. You go down to the warm-up line when they're catching balls at like 50%, he's dropping them. You go to one-on-ones, he's dropping open passes. You go to team, he's dropping open. Like, it was a trend, and like that was the biggest concern for me because I didn't love the Latu pick. I thought you probably could have got him a little later in the draft based on his skill set. And so, but I do, I don't want to be all negative. I want to state some positives. Like in one-on-ones, what I really liked about him is how he set up his routes and how he really was able to sell. Like say he wanted to sell inside, but he's really going outside. He could really sell inside and break back out and create separation with not having high-end speed. But when the ball was perfectly thrown to him, he would drop it. And it was like an egregious drop. And it was just like, I don't know. Like I've said it multiple times. It looks like Braden Willis was the 3rd-round tight end, and it looks like Latu was the 7th-round tight end. Like, it just looks flipped. I do see that Latu has some potential, but that potential will never be realized if you can't catch the football. And it's like, we kind of know what Warner is. Like, you talked about him being like try-hard blocker. Like, that is Warner's biggest attribute of making this roster, is that he can block. He can be that guy coming across the formation and all these Zorro different play like formations, and he can pick up the defensive end. He can kick out the defensive end. He can pull up field and get to the second level, get to the linebacker, get to the safety. The 49ers know that they can operate their run game with Warner in there. And I don't know where that puts Latu, because I think there's a big question. Can Latu do that? They don't know. He hasn't done it in games before, and he can't catch right now. So I don't think they cut Latu just based on the he seems like a good guy. Like you talked about it. Like, I think they believe in the character. I think they believe in the person. So they're going to give him an opportunity. But I think that is where they keep 4 tight ends, because I don't see a world that exists where Kyle Shanahan goes into this season with Kittle, who's already on the shelf with the abductor strain, and then just being like, oh, well, Willis and Latu, those are my guys. Like, he needs someone who can block. And that's why I'm like, it feels like at this stage, they're like, Willis has earned the roster. They're not going to cut Latu because I still think they believe in the person and he can improve. And they got the draft capital investment into him. But you need Warner as your Kittle blocking insurance. So I feel like they keep 4, and that has a direct impact on how many wide receivers they keep. And obviously, Ray got hurt, so that opens up the door for someone else, because I think Gray did enough to solidify his spot. Same thing with the draft compensation that they put into him. Similar conversation. So, man, I wanted to see more out of Latu, though, to be perfectly honest. I definitely had him as a faller on my Risers and Fallers show, just because, man, he really was struggling with drops.
Yeah, Joey Nichols says Latu's a young player, relatively new to the position, going through some confidence issues. He's going nowhere, though. They'll be patient, as they should be. Well, we'll see. I'm not sure. I don't feel nearly as confident as you. Carlos says, wasn't O.J. Howard released by the Raiders? They could get him for cheap. I kind of like Payne Durham, the Purdue tight end, in the draft. You know, there was a lot of good tight ends for sure. Braden Willis has impressed me. A couple last minutes with Brad before we say goodbye. Let's flip the card and talk about the defense real quick. What'd you think of Robert Beal? Was he playing in any of the days you were there? What do you think of my man Spencer Wagee? I know he's on the ground a little bit too much for my liking, but the Niners, you know, Drake's got a hamstring. Bosa's holding out. I'm not as optimistic about Cleveland Farrell as you are. Beal, to me, had one sack in practice that made me go, wow, look at that guy. But then he's missed a lot of time. Hyder got a great motor, but not a lot else at this point. Austin Bryant, I think, is going to help. Alex Barrett, I think, has been really good. Taco Charlton, I think, has been really good. They just signed Breland Speaks, and they'd signed Dalen Hayes. Hayes did not impress me last week in practice. What do you think of the D-line overall? What do you think of the defensive end depth? To me, if they signed Melvin Ingram or Jadeveon Clowney, I would feel worlds better about this team's chances this year. I really think they don't just need Bosa. They need Bosa and one of those two guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel really confident about the interior defensive line. Eric Armstead, Hargrave, Kinlaw, Barrett can play inside and out, and that's what I really like about Barrett. And Barrett is been a guy that I noticed he was taking first team reps in some instances, and in the first team rotation during defensive install. So Barrett is a smaller body, but he's very quick. He's got very good first step get off. He's got really active hands, and he's strong for his size. So I actually think this might be the year that Barrett makes and cracks the final 53 because of his versatility of being able to play outside and inside. And he looks really good. He looks like one of their better defensive linemen. And for a guy who's been a basically career practice squatter, who's been cut 6, 7, 8 times by the 49ers, I think it's one of the more underrated stories of all of training camp, was how good Barrett was. He kind of reminded me of Jordan Willis last year, like where Jordan Willis really looked good in training camp. It kind of feels like Barrett took over that role. But again, I hear you on the defensive end. With no Nick Bosa, Drake Jackson hurt, and admittedly so, I am pretty high on what Clellan has been able to do. I've been pretty impressed with what Clellan has done with Kosurik. Austin Bryant has flashed. You can see some of the speed that he possesses. I think but he missed a lot of time with injury. But I do remember, I think it was that final practice, he got by whoever the tackle was so fast that he inadvertently just ran into Trey Lance's back because he beat him that fast. He basically hand swipe, hit the corner, and he ran straight into Trey Lance. He got in there so fast. So he's intriguing. I haven't seen enough from Beal to honestly have an opinion on him because he was also hurt, and I just never got to time it up with his reps. So I didn't see a lot from Beal. So I'm gonna not give an opinion one way or the other. But I agree with your thoughts on Hyder. Hyder is kind of a guy who is reliable. You know what he's going to be able to do. He's not going to really wow you, but hey, he'll be in the right spot if called upon. And Spencer Wagee, I actually like the move to interior defensive line. I kind of like it, and I thought he flashed a couple times where he was able to get through in pass rushing situations. He also wasn't perfect. You know, he also got blocked a couple times, but I do think Spencer Wagee is a pretty intriguing player that I think with a couple years of development could absolutely be a guy that the 49ers count on. So the defensive line is in a weird spot without Nick Bosa out there and with Drake Jackson hurt. It gets really, really thin at defensive end after that. And like I mentioned, Taco Charlton, I think we all saw that. Like, he's got that nasty counter inside spin move. The second he showed up in practice, he was beating dudes in one-on-ones. You were even seeing it translate to team. So Taco's been a guy. But are those guys that you want to rely on when the game's on the line? I don't know. I do agree with you, though, that some additional defensive end depth would definitely be welcomed and kind of the high-end category.
How about them Niners is taking me to task. He said, Larry, you did not address the question in the least. Didn't say a word about O.J. Howard and brought up two other tight ends. Sorry, Larry, that was bad. Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think a lot of O.J. Howard. I did years ago, but O.J. Howard is now washed out of a bunch of different spots. He was drafted in the first round by Tampa. He's played in Tampa. Didn't work out there. Played in Buffalo. Didn't work out there. Played for Houston. Didn't work out there. The Raiders signed him, five months ago? They've already moved on. He's got a 72-game NFL career. He's made 56 starts. He's got 129 total receptions, 17 touchdowns, 4 fumbles. I love this player years ago. In the draft, I really liked him. He was one of the top high school recruits in the country at tight end coming out of Alabama. He's from Prattville, Alabama. Saban, had to battle with a bunch of other people to keep him in state. The guy runs 4.5. He had a 1.53 10-yard split. He was all SEC his final year at Bama. And then he just has never lived up to the hype. He looks awesome. He's 6'6". He's gifted. He's got long arms. He's got huge hands. He's got acceleration into and out of his breaks. He's got wide receiver speed at tight end. But as far as, a lot of people feel like he's kind of a passive demeanor. A lot of people think he's not the most competitive player. A lot of scouts questioned at several spots along the way whether O.J. Howard loves football or not. How competitive is he? How much does he want it? He's got explosive athletic traits, but as far as it doesn't match his production at the pro level, he's always been kind of considered a tremendous physical talent who didn't take advantage of his full potential. So how about them Niners? How about that breakdown? I just gave you a full breakdown on who he is. He'll get another look or two before he washes out of the league completely because he is 6'6", 240 and runs well. There's a lot to be intrigued about there, but I think I just hit on it. I mean, there's people that question the competitiveness, how much he loves the process, how much he works at it, how is he a glass cutter, or is he a guy that just plays the game because he's athletically gifted? I don't know. I don't know enough about him, but man, he sure has washed out in a number of spots. What, Brad? What do you think? O.J. Howard. I mean, do you have a thought on Howard that stands out in your mind? He's a talented guy. There's no question.
The thought that stands out in my mind is that he was in the same draft class as George Kittle, and look at where George Kittle's at as a 5th rounder, and look at where O.J. Howard is not on a team right now. And I think you nailed it on all the whole kind of resume, but I think that speaks enough to O.J. Howard's career up until this point. He just got released on a team that just traded Darren Waller. So they're looking for a tight end and multiple tight ends. They don't have Foster or Waller. They got rid of their 2 top tight ends, and they through training camp, they're like, all right, OJ, we've seen enough. We're going to give the job to Austin Hooper. So I think that speaks plenty to what I think of OJ. I agree. Thought OJ was nice from a measurable standpoint, but that was it. That's all the story wrote for O.J. Howard. He was a stat sheet A+ prospect. Other than that, underwhelming.
Well, I mean, it's just like you got to do it. You got to do it consistently. I mean, the guy's an explosive athlete. Nobody would ever question that. Everybody saw him in the 2015 national championship game and said where he was massive production and said, "Oh, look at this guy." But that was one day. And he hasn't been able to replicate that where in other spots, and definitely not in the NFL. Fish and Chips says, Larry, you should put your guest YouTube details in their description box. I've got 4 practice squad content slots to fill. Brad might get in. Brad should definitely be part of your breakdown. Brad, tell people if they don't know your channel, it's RSF 49ers, right, on YouTube. Is that what it is?
No, that's Raj. Mine is the SF Niners.
SF Niners. Okay.
So you could find that pretty much on every platform, social media brand, wherever you get your content. That's where you can find me.
So make sure you check out Brad. Once again, the SF Niners. The SF Niners. SF as not, the way it's spelled. SF Niners, Niners. Check Brad out. He's got tons of followers. How many subscribers on YouTube?
I think we broke 71K in training camp.
Monster. That is absolutely incredible. A couple last ones before we let you go. What do you think of Jair Brown?
I like Jair Brown. I thought he looks good around the line of scrimmage. I thought he looks really good in kind of that box role. I do think that he looks a little bit slower than I was anticipating, but again, that could come up with more confidence, being more instinctual, just moving faster. But overall, I thought he looked pretty well. Definitely didn't blow me away didn't really blow me away. I obviously wasn't there when he got the interception on that final day, so I didn't get to see that play. But I watched him a lot in one-on-ones, again, going up against Latu. Latu actually did pretty well against Jair in a lot of those one-on-ones. So I still think Jair is a guy that, again, like I've seen him time off the line of scrimmage, off the edge, and get tackled for losses in the background, and he looked really good in that area. I'm interested to see more of him in coverage.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, he looks like he's going to be a monster in the box, doesn't he? Yeah. He looks like he's going to come up and really starch guys. Mooney Ward said the other day, I said, Mooney, what does Jair look like to you? And he's like, he's a grown-ass man. And he's like, he's going to be smacking people.
Yeah.
And then I asked Jair about it. I'm like, hey, Mooney says you're going to be smacking people. And he started laughing. But there's a confidence to Jair Brown that you don't typically see in rookies. And so I'm really eager to see him when the lights shine bright and the things count for real in the preseason, because, and you know the way it goes in camp, you tag off on runners, but the runner keeps running. But in real NFL football, you detonate on that guy And I think Jair's gotten right in front of the running back a number of times, but it's all in the midst of the scrum. So nobody really necessarily takes notice. I think when you see him go live, you're going to see him put the wall up to a few people and make himself heard. At least that's what Mooney Ward's thinking, and I kind of agree with Mooney on this one.
One of my favorite reps was a hit delivered on Jair Brown from Jordan Mason. And it was that kind of scenario where he was in position to make the tackle, but you could tell he wasn't going to create contact, and they weren't even wearing pads yet. And Jordan Mason, I don't know, man, that dude just looked like he was running angry all training camp. And I don't know, he saw Jair Brown in his way and he lowered the shoulder and lifted Jair Brown up. And I was like, oh, there's Jair's welcome to the NFL moment, or welcome to 49ers training camp moment, because Jordan Mason wasn't messing around. He saw Jair in his way. You could tell Jair was just tagging off, and Jordan said, nope, and lowered his shoulder. I was like, oh, boy, they're getting physical out here. I like it.
Two last ones before we let you go. One on Jake Moody and one on the secondary. Give me your thoughts on Moody. He's booting 60-plus yard field goals that would be good from like 68. I mean, the guy's leg is just crazy.
I've been calling him the franchise kicker. Like he's the franchise kicker. He's got to be. You get drafted in the third round in that comp slot. Got to be the franchise kicker, and I think he's proven it, man. Like the leg is real. Like I'm not going to pretend and sit here like I know how to evaluate kickers other than just watching the ball,
right?
Come off the foot. Like you can tell it comes off with power. Like, and it's going to travel. So it definitely comes off the ball differently than Zane Gonzalez. Zane Gonzalez hasn't been bad in training camp either.
No.
But I do think Moody has proven that if the 49ers find themselves in a spot where they got to kick a 57-yarder, I think they're going to feel pretty confident that they got a guy who can do it. And that's going to be a nice change of pace from, going from Robbie Gould, who was nails, from 40 in. But, it would get a little spotty once you started backing it up. Feels like the 49ers are going to have more options when it comes to getting points on the board from further out. And so I think that's a good thing. And he's going to win the job. It's his job. There's no chance that it's going to go to Zane.
No, but I think the Niners may be able to get a 7th-round pick for Zane, because Zane's been booting 57-yarders and 55-yarders, and Zane looks like a plenty, like if it had just been Zane, you'd be like, he looks plenty good enough to replace Robbie Gould.
I could have told myself on Zane, I'd be like, we can make it work.
Yeah, but Moody's a different animal. Last one. I love the Niner depth on the corner. And to me, it's like, man, when you run out of corners, you're cooked. And you got to have 5 good ones. And I think they got 8 good ones. They got Charvarius Mooney Ward. They got Demo Lenore. They got Isaiah Oliver. Those are the starters. I think all 3 of those guys are pretty solid. I really like Darrell Luter, even though we haven't seen him at all in training camp. Loved his film. He can play man-to-man. He's got really long arms. I love Samuel Womack. Love Deshaun Jameson. Ambry Thomas has even had some good reps, and I'm a big Quantrez Knight fan. I think Knight may have a good preseason. So I got 8 corners that are NFL caliber. You're probably only going to keep 5 or 6. Give me your thoughts on the corners. Who stood out to you? To me, the guys that really stand out are Womack and Jameson.
Yeah, I'll talk about Darrell Luter, who, again, we didn't see, but I got to watch him go through his rehab before every practice, and you get to see him moving, and, I mean, you get to see the size he has. Like, he's got an NFL body. He's going to look massive when those pads come on. I'm excited to see what Darrell Luter looks like. I mean, he moves really well. I mean, watching him go through his, rehab, I'm like, dang, this guy looks like he could be playing out there on the field. So obviously they're making sure that he's all the way healthy, but I really liked what I saw from Darrell Luter without pads, just moving in the open field. I mean, he passed the eye test for sure. So I'm interested to see there. I feel really comfortable with the starters, Ward, Lenore, and Oliver. I think Oliver is definitely locked down that nickel spot. But also, like you said, Samuel Womack is just a baller. Like, he's just a player. He's constantly in position to make plays. He's never not in position. I feel like, like you saw that last play from Trey Lance, kind of was like a 35 bomb to the front corner pylon, and Willie Snead made that insane catch.
Right. Well, Womack had beautiful coverage.
Beautiful coverage, and I feel like Womack, based on his coverage, was like, oh, it's going to be a back shoulder. So I'm going to turn to the outside and anticipate a back shoulder because he was in such good coverage and basically face guarding Willie Snead that he just turned the wrong way. The ball goes right behind his back. Willie's somehow able to get it. But if he turned the opposite way, that's a pick. Like, he would have just scooped it. So Womack is all over the field. He's been great, but that's the second year in a row that Womack has had a really good training camp. And also Deshaun Jameson. I think it's really going to come down to Jameson and Ambry. And, you know, Ambry did have some good reps, but I'm not sure Ambry played well enough that the return ability that Deshaun Jameson brings as well, on top of being able to play cornerback and play physical and play in phase, I feel like Jameson could be that undrafted free agent guy that might push out another third rounder. We'll see. I don't know. Like, I know they like Ambry in the building. Ambry, to me, has had some pretty tough training camps here, like 3 years in a row. So we'll see, but I like what I saw from Jameson. I like what Luter is going to bring to the table. You can already tell Quantrez Knight is just a dog. Like, he's that total dog mentality when he's off to the sideline, like interacting with fans after practice. He's got a super like awesome personality.
Yeah.
You can just see
Great
like
guy.
he's an awesome guy, but when the helmet comes on, he's a dog and he's coming at your neck. And that's one of my favorite things about Quantrez. You don't see a single ounce of fear in him. He's gonna do whatever it takes. And like, he's probably one of the biggest dogs in that secondary just from mentality alone. So, you know, even Taylor Hawkins, like, he shows in spots. Like, he's
he's in great shape this year.
He's got good athletic ability. Miles Hartsfield even popped a couple times. George Odom looks good. Obviously, these are more safeties than cornerbacks, but Quantrez Knight has duality to him. He can play nickel. He can play a little outside. He can play a little safety. Like, so it's going to be fascinating to see how these roster cut downs work. But the hope is that these guys, whatever guys that don't make it, can make it back to the practice squad, because I don't want to lose these guys either. Like, they have a lot of talent at a lot of positions, and I feel pretty good about this cornerback room, and that's without even seeing Darrell Luter. I just got to get the eye test, and I trust my eyes a lot when it comes to evaluation. And just seeing him move, I'm like, yeah, this guy looks like a dude. Like, he looks like he's going to be able to go out there and go up against other number ones, and he's going to be able to stay in phase. I see the fluid hips. I see the long arms. Like, I see him backpedaling. I see him switching his hips. I'm like, yeah, this dude's fluid, and he's hurt. And so I'm like, just imagine what he looks like at 100%.
Yeah, he's got a bone bruise. Hopefully we'll see Darrell Luter soon. I agree, though. Luter looks like a baller. I'm just amazed that Jameson could be that good of a return guy, that solid of a man-to-man cover guy, and play in the Big 12 at a powerhouse program like University of Texas, and goes undrafted. I mean, the Niners took Mike Rumpf in the first round. He didn't cover as well as this guy covers. I mean, you see teams bust with corners in the first round, second round. This guy wasn't. There was no. This guy, the seventh round, there was, as much as teams pass in this league, nobody wanted Deshaun Jameson. I mean, when I saw the footage after the draft, I was like, wait a second. Did this guy was he shot in like a after the draft, deal? And, he's going to be out for the next year. I mean, how did a guy whose film looks this good not get drafted? I mean, it's amazing. I mean, there's got to be something going on here. And sure enough, in minicamp, he looked awesome. OTAs, he looked awesome. Now in training camp, you got Brandon Ayuk going, hey, man, 22 is the real deal. He's around the ball. Nobody's even seen him as a return guy yet. He's a dynamic return man. So, great pick. And I asked Steve Wilkes, how's a guy like this get passed over? He's like, it happens every year. So it really is an amazing thing for all the intelligent football people out there still. And corners are valuable as heck. And still, Deshaun Jameson goes undrafted. And credit Peters and Lynch for what their work they're doing on day 3 and after the draft, because it's the difference between having a good roster and an incredibly deep roster. And the Niners, as you said, have an incredibly deep roster. Brad, awesome stuff, man. What do you got cooking this weekend on the channel? People should check out Brad's channel. It's fantastic. It's blowing up. The SF Niners has got ridiculous numbers of subscribers. What do you do in and around game day?
So typically, I'm at the game, so we're normally doing that type of coverage from the game day. Post a lot of clips from the actual game, pre, during, and post. We do post game stuff, pre-game stuff. So today, or this Sunday, obviously we got the game with the Raiders, so it's going to kind of get back in that groove of, obviously it's an away game, so I'll be posted up, probably watching the game just like you. We'll probably be doing pre-game shows. We'll be doing post-game shows. We'll be doing basically reacting to things that happen. You know how it goes. We're on the YouTube grind, but again, you can follow the SF Niners pretty much on any social platform that you use, and we just try to keep you guys as updated on what's going on with the 49ers as possible.
How's that little boy of yours doing?
Oh, great. He just started walking about a week ago. So
Wow.
he's all over the place, man, just happy as can be.
How old now?
He's a little bit over a year now. So
Wow.
big time blessing in our lives, and it's been amazing, man. I was like, Larry, this training camp stuff with all this quarterback stuff, it can be a little like, just like, oh, here we go again. You got all these people yelling at you for just giving an honest opinion on something.
Right.
And I was just like, I was looking at him in my office the other day, and I was like, man, a year ago, I was leaving training camp to go to the NICU, and like, you're just sitting here, right here, hanging out with me, and I'm like, it's not that bad. Like, this is fine. This is nothing. Like, we're talking football. People are gonna have their opinions. People are gonna get upset if they want to get upset. It's fine, man. Like, there are much bigger fish to fry out there than, having people yell at each other over Brock Purdy or Trey Lance. And I'm just like, yeah, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal anymore. I'm like, oh, I'm doing all right.
The gift of life is not what happens to you. It's the perspective that you have on what happens to you, right? We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, good, bad, for ourselves, for our families. All we can control is our perspective on what happens. So you stay positive. You try to find that, whether it's, religion or whatever that is important to you. For me, family is vitally important. And the rest of it is just, I don't want to say noise, because I love all the people in the chat, and I love all the opinions, and I get as emotional as the people in the chat. I'm as involved as the people in the chat. I'm just like them, but there's something about family that definitely balances you out and gives you perspective. And for me, that's the thing that kind of keeps me grounded. Brad, I love having you on, brother, and we'll do it again here in the next month or so. And we love your content. Keep it rolling. We'll be watching for you on YouTube and, of course, on Twitter, and you're blowing up, brother, and it's good to see. So
I appreciate it, Larry. Thank you for having me, and you too, man. You are doing such a phenomenal job. And again, as someone who's looked up to you for a long time, since when you were on KMBR, and now how you've been able to really like just go super far with this YouTube game, man. It's been super fun to watch, man. I still check in from time to time to listen to you, because you have so much knowledge of this team, and you just say how you feel, and I appreciate that. And it's been a lot of fun to, I know you dived into this last year, and
yeah, March of 2022 was the beginning of the channel, and here we are. It's August of 2023, and we're at 21,000, closing in on 22,000 subs, and more than that. Just I've now had a chance to bring my son onto the channel. He's kind of like one of our editors, and Kev is awesome to share the stream with him and my other sons as well, and my family. I mean, it's been fun. My son who plays varsity baseball, I got to go to every single game this year because I can schedule the streams around the games. And so, I always, before I set, what I'm doing during the week, I'm like, all right, when do you play this week? He's like, Dad, I play Tuesday at 5, Thursday at 5, Saturday at 2, so I block out all those times. And then it's like, I can stream anytime around the clock, and I can do it around that and just not have to miss one of those games. And I got a chance to watch my son pitch at St. Mary's College. He's 17. He's pitching against 19-year-olds earlier this summer. And I'm sitting there going, you know what? This is what it's all about, man. And it's like if I was sitting somewhere or in traffic going to some job somewhere and missing it, it's like the money's great and we make sacrifices for our families. But the reality is it's like these kids grow up fast and all we have is these memories. So it's like I'm really very grateful that the channel has given me an avenue to both enjoy doing what I do and talk to who I want to talk to and about what I want to talk about, but also to do it on a schedule that's very family friendly. So it's been a great year,
keep
man.
It up. You're doing phenomenal, man. Like your growth just in 1 year has been amazing, and you're gonna be part of one of these guys that's continuing to change the game, man. And it's been fun to watch, and I'm glad that we can get together and do these streams. It's a lot of fun.
Brad, have a great day, great evening, great weekend, and go Niners on Sunday. And in a few weeks, we'll dial you back and chop it up with you again. Always love your perspective, bro. Thanks again.
All right, Larry. Appreciate it, man.
There you go. Brad Graham, everybody. Fantastic. He is fantastic. And I could tell everybody, hey, go join Brad's YouTube channel. But the reality is he's got 3 times as many people on his channel than I have over here. So maybe all Brad's fans, you should join our channel instead. No, but Brad's a good man. Absolutely good man. And I'm glad to see his little boy is doing well. All right, let's do this. We got some supers we want to get to. We want to thank our sponsors. I know there's people that have donated that I want to get to them. I've got a few more chats I want to read, a couple thoughts I want to share with you. But first, let me shout out our sponsors. On the bottom of the screen, you see our sponsor, Marin Auto Glass, marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. You're driving down the street, pebble hits the windshield, boom, you got a crack. Now the crack's 2 inches, now the crack's 8 inches, now the crack's 20 inches. And you got to change out the windshield. Well, call Marin Auto Glass or just go to marinautoglass.com, and my man Saeed will come out to your house and have one of his representatives pop out the old windshield, glaze in the new one, sweep away the glass. It cannot be easier. I love Marin Auto Glass. They do a great job. marinautoglass.com. We're also brought to you by New York Style Sausage Company. We'll be there Monday down in on Tasman for a little lunch with some of our contest winners, but New York Style Sausage Company, Mike D'Ambrosio, Laura Pesavento, and all the people there, Pasquale. We'll see them on Monday, and thanks to them for being a sponsor of the show. And then, of course, our title sponsor, Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 7 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue you're going to find anywhere in Northern California. Here's what they look like in Marin. We'll be back in a minute.
So New York Style Sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York Style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, No one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. We have 21,314 subs. If you're in the chat and you've yet to hit like and subscribe, please do. Hit like and subscribe. Hit like. It helps people find the show. You hit subscribe and hit that notification bell. Every time we go live, you'll be getting an alert saying, hey, they're going live. Check them out. Also, if you go to our page on YouTube and you go to the YouTube store, there's merchandise that you can buy there. And support the show that way. And we have the You're Effin' Lazy t-shirts are out as well. It's a good-looking shirt. It has the logo of the show on the front corner and then the You're Effin' Lazy on the back. So that shirt is new. Kev just designed it in the last week. Some good stuff there. In the store at our channel page, The Krug Show on YouTube. All right, so let's hit a few more of these super chats because we've got a few of them that we have not hit. We got this one from Clarence Molina. Hey, Clarence. He says, I think with game reps in the preseason, Trey's physical changes that he's had to make, ball speed, ball placement, footwork, will start to match his processing power, and he'll know where to throw it, but his body hasn't caught up yet. I mean, what I'm seeing is just a player who's, got all the traits that you're looking for. He's smart. He's athletic. He's got a huge arm. He's got good mobility. He's not Lamar. He's not Michael Vick. He's just a mobile guy. And I like the idea this year of less zone reads and just make him play from the pocket like a pocket quarterback. That's what he is. He's a pocket quarterback with mobility. I'd much rather watch Trey scramble on his own and use that natural athleticism than designed quarterback runs. I don't need designed quarterback runs. I want him to just play from the pocket the way that Brock does, the way that Jimmy did, the way that Darnold does, the way that Allen does. Trey can play and succeed from the pocket. That's where I want to see him do it, and I want to see it starting this weekend, and hopefully we will. NFL equals Niners for life. He says, keep Trey quarterback insurance. If Kyle can't get a Super Bowl win with this team, then he's got to go. Your thoughts, Larry? Well, he's going nowhere. I mean, he's going nowhere. He's one of the great offensive minds in the sport. They reached the NFC Championship game last year. With their third-string quarterback that everybody's so unsure of, they scored 33 points a game. That's 4 points per game more than what the number one offense in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, averaged with Andy Reid calling the plays and Patrick Mahomes running the plays. So everybody who's critical of Purdy should just pump the brakes, realize he had a spectacular rookie year, and just sit back and enjoy the show. Now, is he never going to lose? No, he's going to lose. Is he never going to throw a pick? No, he's going to throw a pick. But overall, the guy, he can process, he's on time, he's accurate. He's got requisite arm strength. If he doesn't have requisite arm strength over the course of time, that will hurt him, and that will lead to turnovers, and maybe a lot of turnovers. And it may lead to the Trey Lance era beginning. But I think you start with Purdy, and you go with Lance off the bench. I'm eager to see Lance play well. I'm predicting that he will. The one unknown, and I've stated it to Brad, and I stated it earlier today to Al Sacco, is that I'm pretty confident that Trey Lance is going to play well. The question is, how do the Niners react to that? And how do the other teams in the league react to that? Do the Niners then believe in him and decide, hey, we don't want to move him, we want to keep him? And do the other teams in the league look at that and say, hey, this guy's much better player than we thought. We want to trade for him, and now we're going to offer something that's more in line with his true value. I don't know the answers to those questions. I don't know if the Niners are going to keep him or move him. I don't know if the league's going to want him or not want him. But I don't think he's going anywhere, especially if the best offer is a mid-fifth round pick or a conditional fifth-round pick. We got this one from David Mooschek, has become a YouTube member. Hey, David, thank you for joining the Krug Show. We appreciate you kindly. Thanks for joining the channel and being a subscriber and a channel member to the Krug Show. Holland Tracy said, absolutely well said, Larry. One thing I've never regretted was having children. It's been the greatest blessing of my life. Oh, yeah. Come on, man. I mean, the rest of this, I mean, if your entire life is about, a battle between two 23-year-old quarterbacks that you've never met, it's kind of a lonely existence, to be completely honest. Family means everything, and they're the ultimate balancing act in at least in my life. I don't know, but I don't want to speak for everybody. Everybody's different, and to each their own. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Brad Graham. We're almost 2 hours into our live stream, but we're not done for the day. No, we are not. At 8 o'clock tonight, Damon Bruce stops by for a third live stream on this Friday. We'll talk about a number of things: Giants baseball, Niner football. Who knows? Who knows what we'll get into with Damon? But that's coming up tonight at 8 o'clock on the channel. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on the West Coast, noon on the East Coast, the coach stops by, and we'll chop it up with the coach and look ahead to Niners-Raiders and talk a little bit about the week that was for the 49ers. Coach is fired up. He wants to get in and give us his opinions. We're fired up to hear it. So that's tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. On Sunday, we've got the Niners and the Raiders at 1 o'clock. And at 4 o'clock, I'll go live with Bay Area Baller. Maybe the coach will be joining us as well. I've got to double-check that with him. If not, maybe we can get JD in here. My son's going to join in. We'll do a little post-game off Niners-Raiders, 4 o'clock on Sunday. On Monday on the channel, I normally join Grant Cohn, and I believe we probably will talk at some point on his channel on Monday. Also, Monday night on the channel, JT the Brick's going to be in the house, and we'll get his review of Niners-Raiders. He is going to be he obviously does a lot of stuff with the Raiders, lives in Las Vegas, and he'll be a perfect guy to kind of give us a non-49er view of Niners-Raiders. He'll take a look at it much more from the Raider perspective, and oftentimes those are the best people to talk to. So we'll visit with JT the Brick on Monday nights. And then, of course, we're back at training camp on Tuesday, and we'll bring you sights and sounds, camp previews, practice reviews, the good and the bad, the instant reaction, all that stuff, once again, starting Tuesday. So hope you enjoyed the live stream with Brad Graham. Thanks to each and every one of you for supporting the Krug Show. Check out that Krug Show store, and if you can, grab one of those T-shirts. And the You're Effing Lazy T-shirt is becoming a hot seller already out of the chute. And join us tonight in, about 4 hours from now, 4 hours and 7 minutes for the great Damon Bruce in the house on the Krug Show. Until then, peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you